take your art seriously, not personally. Where have I gotten this idea? Well, I've had this idea for about a year now, but I think it's been a culmination of many years spent in the artistic circles, whether that's the academic setting or different venues pocketed around cities like Seattle and Milwaukee, and hearing artists over the years talk about their process, but also a general sentiment that's expressed among them where they're hesitant putting their stuff out there. And the reason, really the most common reason I've heard, is they're hesitant because their art is personal. Now, to an extent, yes, your art is personal. Naturally, it's an extension of you, it's an extension or an expression of your ideas. Maybe you work in art like I do every day, maybe a few hours or even several hours a day, producing your craft and working at it, that kind of craftsmanship, that workmanship. So yeah, it's an integral part of you. It's an important part of your day, your routine, and it's also an important part of your life. To that extent, I do think your art is personal. I think though when you are actually considering withholding putting your art out there, I think that's when it gets too personal. And I think it's because we may take things too personally. We may take a rejection of our art too personally, a dismissal of our art, or a critique of our art. Even if it's a well-meaning critique, we might take it too personally. And that's when I think we have to separate ourselves from our art. That's when we have to just put our art out there, regardless if it's well received or if it's received at all. And it sounds like a bit of a stretch, but just hear me out on this, because it's really, it could hinder us. It can hinder our productivity, our producing our art, if we do take things too personally. And so when it is a personal thing, consider, yes, it's an extension of you, but don't wholly link your art to your personhood. And I'll get to that in a minute, what I mean by that. But let's take the example of you putting your art out there only for it to be rejected or ignored. And I want to encourage you in this, that a rejection of your art is not a rejection of who you are as a person. It's not an attack on your character. It's not an attack on your person. It's just simply they don't care for your art, or maybe it's just a matter of preference. Maybe it's just a matter of preferring to spend their time with something else. For instance, I'll use an example with me. The little time that I can spend reading fiction, I devote that time to science fiction specifically. I write science fiction, but I've read science fiction over the years, and it's just my favorite genre. And I want to learn from the classics and also contemporary reads, and so I spend my time with that genre specifically. Now that may change over the course of my life. I might get into other genres and other styles of writing, but for now, it's just been science fiction, and I've enjoyed the ride. And my preferring to spend my time with science fiction is not an attack on another author who writes high fantasy or a thriller, or a seminal mystery novel. Like let's say an author writes something seminal, like a seminal piece of mystery fiction writing. I'm not attacking that person who's done well, who's written a good piece of work, maybe even a masterpiece. And I know that I'm well aware that I will course through life missing a lot of great work because I prefer to spend my time in one specific thing or a couple things. And so just know that people deciding not to listen to your music or to see your exhibition, for instance, or to buy a piece of artwork of yours, it's not an attack on your person, and so you shouldn't take it personally. And I hope that is an encouragement there. One other reason why people have ascribed the word personal for their art is maybe unwittingly. Artists may have unwittingly put all their identity in their art. Now, I actually want to advise against this. I do advise against putting all your identity in your art, really for a logical reason. And that is, once you've put your art out into the world, that art exists outside you, outside your existence, meaning it is out there to be experienced in ways you never intended, ways you can't control, and experienced by people that you may never know, that you may never be affiliated with. If you have enough audience, or if you're online on social media or YouTube, as I'm doing YouTube, I may never meet you in person. I may never know you as an individual. You may never know me as an individual. But you have my art. You have something tangible. We're talking about music, but maybe something physical like an album, or just hearing it online. It's tangible. It's an experience, at least with music, where however you experience my music, that's your choice. That's just how you've been brought up. That's your environment. That's maybe part of your culture. Maybe you don't even speak my language as your first language. So your experience with my music is going to be different from what I experience composing that music, what I hope to do with that music, what I intended for you with this. So just know that you actually do have to separate yourself from your art. Your art stands separate to you once it's out there because it exists outside your existence. We understand timeless pieces of art, the architecture and the chapels and the cathedrals, Da Vinci, Mona Lisa. Those people are long gone, but their art remains. Mozart's music is being played. Brahms, Beethoven, all those great composers, they're long gone, but their art is maintained. Their art is preserved. Their art exists outside their existence. So I think for it to be personal, don't take it too personally where all your identity goes into your art simply because you can't. Physically, spiritually, metaphysically, whatever you want to take it, however you want to take it, your art does exist. It stands apart from you. At that point of releasing the piece of music, exhibiting your art at a venue, exhibition, or something like that, or selling your art, that product, yes, it's an expression of you. That novel, yes, you've spent perhaps months, years on that story, but it's to be read, it's to be absorbed by someone outside your best intentions, outside your control. And so, logically speaking, it doesn't make sense to be so, have your art be so personal, because it does exist outside your person. At that point, it exists outside your personhood. So I do want to encourage you that it's okay to keep your art separate from you. It's okay, it's healthy even to have your ego separate from your art in that regard. So do be okay with your art standing on its own, standing separate to you. It's an extension of you, but at the same time, it is separate from you. And that gives you the freedom to receive reception objectively, to receive rejection objectively, that it's not an attack on your person. And if it is a critique, maybe it's an objective critique that you can consider, saying, oh yeah, they're right, I did fall short in this way, or I could have added this, or maybe I didn't need to include this here. Constantly evaluating what you could do better and how you can produce value to the world. But give yourself a little grace, a little freedom. Give your listeners, give your audience the freedom to experience your art the way they will. It's outside your control anyway. So give yourself enough freedom and grace to let go of your art, really, literally and figuratively, once it's out there for the world to have. It's very important, though, that the art is out there. For instance, for me in my science fiction writing, I have spent years in my science fiction writing. I've spent so much of my time, so much emotional intelligence in my stories. And if my stories are never received, yeah, I'll have to let that go. But that's not stopping me from getting those stories out there, because they have to get out there. So take personal accountability, take some responsibility, and say, you know what? I have to produce the art because I have to. The art has to be out there. And with that, I think you'll be objective in your craftsmanship and learning as you go, as you're building skills, and you will be objective with how you can provide value to the person and giving them that freedom to like your art and say, oh, that was nice. Well, I'm going to move on to something else. Now, do take your art seriously. Just because you've separated your ego or your personhood from your art doesn't mean you have to be apathetic or careless or lazy or reckless. Be objective with your craftsmanship. Be objective with quality. Every human being has some level of understanding, a mutual understanding with every other human being. That understanding of quality, that understanding of art and craftsmanship. So do be objective, because really everyone else is objective to some degree. So that all said, take your art seriously, but don't take it so personally where you withhold producing value to the world and producing that art and getting that art out there. So thanks for always watching, of course, and listening, and always be on the lookout for some sound experimentation every Thursday and some commentary on art every Tuesday. And until then, happy composing and experimenting and producing the art you love, and get that art out there. And I'll see you next time. Thanks again.